Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of CCWTX Chats. Today, we're talking all things legal, and I have Gavin here with us. I will let him introduce himself. Gavin?
Hey guys, Gavin Norris. I'm an attorney here in Odessa, Texas. The staff attorney for the Crisis Center, in addition to my private firm that serves a Permian Basin, the state of Texas, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. Our primary focus, what we do privately, is all family law issues from adoptions to child custody, divorce. We do oil and gas litigation and also probate and estate planning. And then for the Crisis Center, we help prosecute all the cases regarding child custody, divorce, primarily family violence type cases, family violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, sex trafficking, are all the things that we do with the Crisis Center.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Gavin, for being with us today. So we will just jump right in. Can you explain to people what VAWA is and how it helps survivors?
Absolutely. So VAWA is the Violence Against Women's Act. It's a federal act that helps victims that are of family violence, of sexual assault. It specifically targets individuals that are undocumented immigrants or undocumented persons, to allow them some protections from their abusers. And the whole purpose of it is to give federal funding, federal access, stop immigration type issues when you are a victim, and really give more protection to victims' rights.
Okay, and that was kind of my next question. What rights does an undocumented victim of domestic violence have here? And then also, should they be, afraid of kind of coming forward and asking for services?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Starting with the first one, victims have every right as anyone else in the state of Texas. Just because you may not be documented doesn't mean that you have less protections under the law. A crime is a crime. If you're a victim, you're a victim, and so you're still entitled to some of those things. Now, where that might change is some abilities to get some victim assistance from some local authorities, as a state provides some provided laws, but the federal law, which supersedes any state or local laws, gives larger protections, and that's what a VAWA does. One of the biggest things that we see, because a lot of our cases involve victims who are undocumented, and one of their greatest fears and one of the greatest crimes with victims is they don't want to come forward. My abuser has told me that if I come forward, they're gonna call ICE. They're gonna report my immigration status. So victims feel like they are trapped into not coming forward because they don't feel that if they've built a life here, they've done whatever they needed to do, and they'll be deported. And that's the unfortunate thing. We don't see that a lot. It's mainly used as a method or tool of control, a form of abuse. But when you are a victim, we really work with our victims to say, listen, don't be scared, come forward. There's some things that we can use to protect you. We have other agencies that work with this and work with immigration issues to make sure that your immigration status doesn't impede or stop your ability to get justice.
I think that's such an important thing for our community to know. Even if you are undocumented, you have the same rights as any other Texan under the law. And also, our services at the Crisis Center are free for undocumented and documented people, any survivor. So thank you for that information. My next question is, and this is a question that I have even had to Google myself, even as a Crisis Center staff, what's the difference between a restraining order and a protective order? When is the right order to order, right? It can get so complicated. So let us know, what is the difference?
Okay, so using the right terminology is imperative to understanding what's going on.
Okay.
So here's the difference between a restraining order and even how these in a protective order and how they are implemented. At its basic level, a restraining order has more civil impact. It doesn't have a criminal effect. A protective order has a criminal effect. So that's the basic way to say it. How does this work? So anytime we file, in most cases, the majority of cases, when we file a divorce or we file a child custody case, we'll file a temporary restraining order. That restraining order will say, generally say things that like, you all can't talk disparagingly about each other. You can't talk, parents can't talk disparagingly about each other on social media. You can't talk disparagingly about each other in the presence of the hearing of the child. You can't threaten each other. You can't hit each other. Um, in a divorce, you can't destroy property. Um, you can't change passwords. You can't kick the other person out of the house. A restraining order just simply says you're restrained from taking these actions. Now, if a person violates a restraining order, the consequence for that is possible contempt of court for violating a court order, just like any other civil court order. There's no criminal punishment. You'd have to file with the court, file for contempt. The judge could say, I'm holding you in contempt, and then put you in jail for being in contempt, but there's no immediate criminal responsibility or issue there. For a protective order generally says family violence has been committed, a crime has been committed, and based on that crime, we need a emergency order, or either emergency or permanent order, to keep the victim safe until we can go to court. Now, where do we likely see these? And there's probably three scenarios where we see protective orders the most. In the event of a sexual assault or a physical assault or family violence on a person or child, anyone like that, and someone generally gets arrested, most of the time when they're arrested for sexual assault, family violence, once they get ready to get released, or during the point where they're still in jail, they'll be issued a magistrate, a justice of the peace or magistrate will issue an emergency protective order. That emergency protective order says, based on the probable cause, based on a warrant, a probable cause affidavit, I believe that a crime has been committed, this person is a victim, and somebody needs to stay away. It's normally 150 to 200 feet from the other person. You can't go to them, near them. You can't communicate with them. You can't go to their house, their school, their place of work. And so you normally get a emergency protective order. It can last anywhere from 30 days up to 90 days. And a lot of that depends on the judge and the severity of the crime. So you normally get an emergency protective order. If a person violates that emergency protective order or any protective order, at that moment when they're found that they have violated, they can be arrested that moment for violation of that protective order. In a lot of cases that we see, when a person, even when there's an emergency protective order or we're doing a divorce or child custody, we'll file what we call an ex parte protective order on top of the emergency protective order. And the ex parte says, hey, judge, we're going to, there's family violence. We need some additional issues with the court to protect this person. And so we're sending you an affidavit. We're saying keep a protective order in place until we can go to court. That protective order normally can be in place between 14 to 21 days. And then we'll normally get a hearing at least within 14 days, 10 to 14 days of that order. So that's the second type of protective order. And the third would be just a general protective order, where we say, judge, violence has occurred, some type of crime has occurred. We don't need emergency protection right now. And that's what the emergency protective order and the ex parte gives, emergency protection.
Okay.
So we don't need an emergency protection, but we do need long-term protection. And so they'll set a hearing within 30 to 45 days, have a hearing, and if the judge finds that family violence has occurred or sexual assault, then they can issue that. Protective orders under the state of Texas, generally, once a permanent protective order is in place, it's normally the period it lasts is 2 years, and then you'd have to renew it every 2 years. Or the state of Texas has opened it up to where you can get lifetime protective orders, and we've been successful in being able to get some lifetime protective orders for some of our clients and our survivors.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question, if lifetime protective orders is a thing, and you answered it. So great. My last kind of question and thought to bring up is, Is there something that you want the community to know about what you do and, these family violence cases or sexual assault cases that you see? Is there just anything that you want to let the community know about this?
Absolutely. So, one, family violence comes in a variety of forms. Um, a lot of times people don't fully understand what family violence is. Family violence doesn't always mean, or abuse doesn't always mean, that you're going to be left with physical bruises.
Mm-hmm.
It's both emotional and it could be physical. Or it could be as simple as every time my husband gets drunk or my wife gets drunk, she likes to push me,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's family violence. It's an unwanted touching, unwanted contact. And that's violence. Just because, so I think that's the one of the big things I think people need to know. That's violence that comes in very, very many shapes and forms. There's no real prescription for family violence. Just because you've never called the police in the past doesn't mean that we can't prove a case for you. Normally, there's other things we can use, um, witnesses, text messages, things like that. It can be something as simple as, you and your spouse getting into it and your spouse texting you later on saying, "I'm sorry for what happened." Normally that's enough for us to move forward on it. And that you don't necessarily have to have that, but that's enough for us to move forward on. If you are afraid that you're in a situation of family violence, ask for help, seek help. There are tons of people out here and resources to help you. Don't be afraid. A lot of times we'll go above and beyond. We're blessed to have such a great team. We'll go above and beyond to make sure that our clients are safe, whether it's 8 in the morning or midnight at night. We're fully staffed to make sure that we can protect victims' rights. That's what our mission is. That's what we live for every single day. Um, Sometimes the wheels of justice turn slow. It's not always fast, so sometimes you just have to be patient. Um, we have some cases. We have a hearing today at 10:30. This case has been pending for about a year and a half because of different delays with courts. But today, our client will get justice that she needs and that she's been wanting for a long time. So sometimes it moves really quick. Sometimes it takes a longer time. Um, Understanding that there's a such thing as marital rape. We're dealing with several cases now with
Mm-hmm.
marital rape. Um, so just because you're married and your spouse wants to have sex with you and you might not, that's still rape. Um,
Yeah.
and sometimes those cases are harder to prove, but that's something that you should move forward with. Um, Even sometimes if we don't have the resources to help you out, we partner with a lot of different agencies across the state that we can still help give you the resources you need if we're not able to do it. And so we just encourage everyone to reach out. We all have a responsibility. This is our social and civic responsibility. If we know someone who's a victim, it's our job to speak out. It's our job to report. It's our job to say, hey, this isn't right. And so um, when we're silent for one person, that next time it could be us or someone that we know. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is we're all affected by family violence. No one is exempt, regardless of your social status or your station in life. Either we all have been victims or we know someone who's been a victim, or it's within our families.
Yeah.
And so we're not immune. Seek help. Um, if you're afraid of the money part, which is a legitimate deal, how can I move forward? My life is falling apart. We really try to make sure our point is to not give you legal justice, but empower you to move on and move forward with life,
Mm-hmm.
because there is life after all of this. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but there is definitely life when all this is said and done. You can move forward. So that's what I'd want everyone to know.
Thank you so much for that information. I think we have some really good stuff on here. If you are undocumented, we can help you for free, just like people who are documented. If you have past charges, even for family violence or an assault charge, we can help you. You don't have to get a divorce if you come to the crisis center, right, for help. That's really great. And also, we can help Spanish speakers. If you only speak Spanish, we are more than happy to help. We are just here for all survivors in every capacity. So Gavin, thank you so much for sharing this expertise. It has been eye-opening for myself, and I know it's going to be great for our community to get this information.